criminal defense
Well,
lawyer.
let me bring in a gentleman who represents a number of people that have been forced to become experts in the treatment of mental illness, unfortunately, because they're supposed to be minding a jail. Elias, the interesting thing about correction officers is no matter the movie, right? Shawshank Redemption, right? You name it. The Green Mile. You name it, the CO is always the bad guy, right? You represent the bad guys, which is ironic being up here with a couple of people who are former criminals. So tell me, one, what do you think of what Matt said about mental illness? How does that play into your members? And what about my question more broadly about how do we fix the criminal justice system? We all want to be safe.
I'm still learning and trying to be politically correct when I speak. I get real nervous every time I hear the government, be it federal, city, state, local, talk about criminal justice reform. It just, because what I've found in the last 4 or 5 years, 2 years especially of being the president, most of the people that I sit down with have no idea of what they're talking about when they start talking about criminal justice reform. I mean, I damn near don't even know what it means anymore, other than, get out of jail free, or, he did it because he was mentally ill, or he was homeless. Look, with corrections, we're the last stop on the train when it comes to criminal justice. But for whatever reason, everybody wants to focus on the last stop and not the first stop. Nobody wants to focus on the judges, the lawyers, the district attorneys, the police. Nobody wants to focus on the person that this person met 5 times before they got to me. So when we start talking about criminal justice reform, we're always only talking about jail. And like you said, and I'll close with this, I have an issue, and I talk to you about it, because when it comes to the American DNA in correction officers, depending on your age, we're talking about the Shawshank Redemption. We're talking about James Cagney. I mean, hell, my show Scandal. Cyrus got arrested, and when he went to jail, the CEO set him up to get his butt kicked. So, correction officers don't usually get that law and order, blue bloods type of light.
Let me bring in Richard here. Richard, in your book, Kingpin, you told the story of being housed in a federal prison, and you and your fellow inmates were so antagonistic towards one of the correction officers that you actually, not you personally, but you, the inmates, actually drove this officer to kill himself. How does the relationship between COs, people in prison, and people in jail, how does it improve?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, obviously education is always an issue, but I think that, look, correction officers, cops, like everybody else, there's good and there's bad. I mean, in the 8 years I was in prison, I met some really good, stand-up, respectable, honest correction officers who I could consider to be really doing their job and doing it right. But I also met and came in contact with correction officers who were involved in criminal activity themselves, who were on the take, who were bringing in drugs. I mean, these things exist, and I will say that in my years, since I got out of prison, I've acted as an expert witness in a number of cases where there were homicides in prison. And homicides in prison, in my experience,